Hi, it's Chris Titley here. On this week's episode of Scoreboard, I'm joined by Georgia Godwin. Georgia, thank you so much for being part of the series.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm super excited to be on.
Now, Georgia, you're coming in live from Canberra. We're here on the 20th of December, 2024, almost the end of the year, sort of dragged towards the end of the year. How has your 2024 been?
It's not been what I expected, but I have learned a lot about myself, and there's been a lot of personal growth. In the lead up to Paris Olympics, I had a pretty major injury, a major setback. I ruptured my Achilles, and so that definitely changed the trajectory of the year. But yeah, like I said, I've learned a lot, and I'm coming out the other side stronger.
Yeah, I've actually done my Achilles in 2004, 20 years ago, ruptured playing basketball, and I remember the rehab was just all about calf raises. Is it still the same thing?
Yep, so calf raise was one of the first milestones that I had to overcome, and it was a huge mental challenge. Like, I felt like my calf and Achilles was strong enough to do it, but my brain was just trying to protect me, I guess, and just wouldn't let me. So it was trying to find the balance between pushing enough, but also like listening to my brain. And yeah.
You've still got a smile on your face, which is great, and it's been a tough year for you with that injury. I suppose the lessons that you've learnt through your career to get you through to this sort of element now to not be, obviously it's very, very disappointing, but it's not, as I say, not on the operating table. Can you talk about your little bit of resilience, I suppose, and how you picked yourself up?
Yeah. Well, I guess when you have something that really changes your plans and where you thought you were going, and like my whole life evolved around preparing for the Paris Olympics, and when that's taken away, and I don't know, I think it was about maybe 15 minutes between doing it and confirming that I had actually ruptured it. It really sets a spanner in the works. You have to for me, I had to go through the emotions. So I was upset, I was angry, I was frustrated, I was confused as to why this was happening to me. But after I was able to kind of sort through all of that and figure out my mental health, I was able to move on, and I knew I wanted to come back to the sport. So I just needed to find a way to do that safely, and also in a way that, like, I still love the sport, but in a way where I can find joy in the little things that I can do, because there's still a lot of things I can't do.
Touching on that, in terms of your love for gymnastics and your relationship with gymnastics, do you want to describe what it is, and I suppose has it changed over time?
Yes. Well, some parts of it has changed, but other parts, there's parts of it that also haven't. So one part that hasn't changed, that has stuck with me since I pretty much first started gymnastics, was the challenge of the sport. It's not like where you learn one skill and you're like, yep, done. I've learnt the whole sport. It's like an ongoing growth and learning process. So every day I'm challenging myself to be a better version of myself, and to get stronger, to get faster, to get cleaner. So I just love the challenge that I put on myself. I've also met some amazing people through this sport, so I'm super grateful for that. Yeah.
And the early love of the challenge, when did that begin? Was there a particular moment or a particular thing in your childhood where you went, wow, this is awesome?
I was naturally strong and fast when I was younger, so I was generally put with the older girls, and so I'd look up to the older girls and I'd want to be exactly like them, even though I was 3 to 4 years younger than them. So that was where my love for the challenge began, to try and push myself to beat these older girls.
Yeah, and did you in the end?
I did. It took a couple years, a bit of persistence and determination. But yeah, eventually, yeah, everything just kind of came together, and yeah.
And do you think that's where the sort of the early stage of the competitive trait came from?
For sure. I'd say I'm naturally competitive, but I think that's where it started growing.
Mm. And gymnastics is super physical and super grueling, and there's obviously lots of technique required and precision required. But also, I'd imagine, the ups and downs of it all, particularly with injuries, but also with scores and performances and missing out, etc. How have you coped with that?
Yep. So yeah, like you said, there are some instances where you think you've done this amazing routine, but the score just doesn't reflect it. For me, like especially in a competition setting, I just have to move on. Like you've still got apparatuses to do, you've still got other things to focus on, so there's no point dwelling on that. But after everything's done and I've had time to kind of think things through, then I look back at videos and talk with coaches and just figure out where we went wrong and how we need to change so we can actually impress the judges. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I want to touch on some of your career highlights in terms of the Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games and World Championships, etc. Is there one that particularly stands out for you?
Um, well, going to the Olympics, it's the pinnacle of our sport. So going to the 2021 Olympic Games after all the COVID shenanigans and whether
Yep. Stop, start. Yep.
yeah, yeah, whether the Olympics were going to be cancelled or postponed, like all of that, it was just an experience to get there. So that is probably one of my highlights, but in line with that would have to be the 2022 Commonwealth Games. Um, it was a bit of a tough year running in with injuries, but that whole experience with the team, not just the gymnastics team, but the whole Australian team, wearing the green and gold, and just being able to do the performance of a lifetime was absolutely incredible.
And that particular Commonwealth Games was one gold and three silvers, was it?
Um, two gold,
Two silvers. Two gold,
two
sorry.
gold, and two silvers and a bronze.
Yeah. Too many. Yeah, well, it would have been just an amazing experience. As a young Georgia growing up doing gymnastics, was the ultimate goal the Olympics, and did it pan out to be the as much as the ultimate dream fulfilled?
I feel like I might have had a bit of a different childhood to most, like especially leading up to the Olympics. When I was younger, I didn't know about the Olympics. I just did the sport because I loved it and my friends did it and it was challenging, and every day I could climb the rope as fast as I could and try and beat my time from yesterday. That's why I went to the gym and that's why I loved it. But as I got a little bit older and I started seeing, I think it was the Beijing Games. Um, After that happened, I was like, okay, like this is pretty cool. And things just started flowing on from there. I got asked to trial in Brisbane for the elite training squad. And so that's when it all kind of started becoming real.
And was there an element of like you're doing it for fun, you're enjoying it, you're having the time of your life, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into highly competitive, high performance. There's a chance here we can go somewhere higher and whatnot. Did it change a little bit to you?
100%. So when I was younger, I did the sport because I loved it. It was fun. And then I think I forgot that aspect of the sport. Like I wanted to be the best and I would do anything to get there. And that sometimes meant taking the fun out of the sport. But now I've really changed my mindset on things, and I believe I do my best training, my best competing when I am having fun and I'm enjoying the process. And there's not really like this materialistic outcome that I want. I just want to know that I did my absolute best and I had fun.
What do you reckon was the catalyst for that change? Was it a particular event or a particular training session or whatnot?
I can't think of like one specific thing that would have kicked that off, but I think it might have been like the high performance environment's pretty demanding. Like you either keep up with it or you get left behind. So for me, coming into the high performance environment at a pretty young age, I think I was about 11, that was like, yeah, I had to really work my butt off and kind of make a name for myself and get the big skills going and just try and do what the big girls were doing, but on a whole nother level.
That's incredible at that age of 11. I suppose the pressure on the shoulders from as you mentioned having fun to now being high performance. Did you work out at that some point in time there that you're actually really good and there was a chance that you can with the right practice and coaches etc become a world champion?
Um, I lack confidence. And so I'm always like, I'm my toughest critic. So if something doesn't go right, then I'm like, I just need to do better. If I'm trying to be better and be stronger and that just doesn't really go how I want it to in my mind, then I'd come back the next day and try twice as hard and try and keep working through things. So, yeah.
Does that sort of veer into, if I say the word perfectionist?
Yes, I think that word does play a little bit into especially how I dealt with things when I was younger during that first elite phase. Whereas now I still have a tendency to do a little bit of that, but I'm learning to just go with the flow. And like we're all human, we make mistakes, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, particularly when I'm interested to know, is there such thing as a perfect routine? Like you said, you mentioned that the perfect routine in Birmingham, but is there such a thing?
Definitely not. Not for me anyway. Like perfect is different for every athlete. And like I said, I'm always tough on myself. There's always something that I can do better. Even in Birmingham, like there were things that as soon as I finished the comp, I'm like, this is what I want to work on. This is what I want to do better for finals or event finals. So like, yeah, perfect looks different for everyone. I've also learned to enjoy the small wins and not just look straight to what I need to fix. So yeah, that's been a nice mindset change.
Yeah, no, just touching on that that sort of improvement on each routine or improvement on a training session, etc. Do you come off after a routine and like you come off with like an endorphin or a dopamine hit that you're happy, or you kind of like yeah, yeah,
Um, in a competition setting, I've tried to be a bit more in the moment and like whether it was a good routine or a not good routine, like I'm just happy that I get the opportunity to perform and show everyone what I've been working on. Especially after this injury, like things can be taken away so quickly. So I think moving forward and any competitions that I'm able to compete in next year or the year after, I'll just be super excited to even just be there. Whereas previously, I kind of was really just deadpan, and you wouldn't be able to tell if I was happy or sad. I kind of just my brain just moved on to the next thing. And then you'd ask, hey, like, how was your first apparatus? And I wouldn't be able to really tell you how it went because I just forget about everything and move on very quickly. So I'm trying to change that a little bit and live more in the moment.
yeah. Do you pause and reflect at all now? Is that something like a trait that you've as you get older and say, look, this is actually what I've achieved. This is like you must be proud of yourself, or do you go right? This is good, but let's go for the next one.
Um, It depends on the situation. So if it's like an all around competition and I'm mid comp, I'll be like, yep, like that was great. Well done. You've done this skill that you were working on really hard, but we're still mid competition. So let's not get too excited. Whereas if it's an event final, then 100% I'll just be over the moon and ecstatic as soon as I land.
Yeah, I mean, like also broadly speaking, looking back at your achievements now, are you proud?
100%. I
Yep.
don't think I took the time to really process things when they happened, like Commonwealth Games. Tokyo led straight into Commonwealth Games, so I didn't really have a chance to celebrate Tokyo. We went straight into isolation and then straight back to training for Com Games. So, but looking back on it now, I'm like, you did really well considering the circumstances that were thrown at you.
And you've had a setback now with your Achilles. Can you talk about some of the other setbacks and how you've actually, got through them all and to become who you are now?
Yep. So there's been a couple, and I think injuries is the main one, but one of the other ones that was an injury was non-selection to, I think it was the 2014 Commonwealth Games.
That
And
makes sense with the even numbers from 2022. Yes.
yeah. So I won national championships that year, but was left off the team and wasn't really given an explanation. So obviously, I'm devastated. It could have been my first benchmark event, but once they've named the team, they've named the team. You can't really do much about that. So my way of moving forward was process the emotions, be angry, be frustrated, be sad, but then get back in the gym and train so hard that next time they just can't leave you off the team. So yeah, that's kind of where a lot of my drive comes from. Like,
Do,
yeah.
do you remember that moment, that particular moment where your name? Well, I don't know how the modern communication of selection is, whether it's an email, phone call, text message, or whatever it might be. But that moment where you're like, "This is I'm not. Hold on, I'm not in the team." That moment, sort of, have you bottled that up to know that what that feels like to keep that motivation going?
It was pretty brutal how it was announced. So straight after the competition, we were all taken to a room, told who was competing, and who was selected onto the team. Then the team members who weren't selected went back out into the nationals arena where everyone was waiting for the official team announcement. And then that's when they started calling the girls up one by one. And of course, I'm super excited for the girls, but I'm also heartbroken. But we just had to stand there and clap and just put on this like really happy face when, to be honest, like all I wanted to do was go and cry in a corner.
Yeah, no, that sounds very, very tough on you, and obviously there's a lot of resilience there, but a lot of drive from that as to know to get back out there and to prove, and obviously there's further events to come through. I'm also curious to know about like your habits when you go into a gymnastics routine. Are you nervous? Are you calm? Are you listening to ACDC?
A lot of people say I look calm, but I don't feel calm at all. Like there's a million thoughts going through my mind. I'm really nervous. I kind of feel like I'm the duck sitting on water, where everything above water looks really calm, but then underneath I'm paddling really hard and just trying to like make my way through this routine. But in saying that, like one of the questions I get from little kids is, do you still get nervous at competitions? And of course you do. Like you care about how you do, so of course you're going to get nervous. So yeah, I tell them, yep, I get nervous for any competition, whether it's states, nationals, Olympics, worlds. I get nervous.
Do you want to share some tips for those youngsters out there now, how you overcome those nerves and potentially how you use that nervous energy to your benefit?
Of course. I've been in this sport a long time, so I've learned what works for me. I've been doing this for 24 years now. And for me, like, I know I'm going to get nervous, so I don't pretend that it's not going to happen. I try and channel that energy into my routine. I listen to music. I do breathing exercises. I talk to people. I try and just treat it like another training day. But if things get too much, then I'll kind of take myself away from the big emotional space, which is like the competition area, and just try and bring the heart rate back down.
Yeah, and then when you're out there just about to go, or the music's about to begin, or you're just about to give the green light to go, how are you in the flow?
Positive self-talk. So
Yep,
there's a lot of like, come on, George, you can do it. You've done this a
yep.
hundred times. Just have fun. Go out there and show everyone what you've been working on, and yeah,
And then during the routine, what's going through your head?
not a whole lot. It happens so quickly, and I'm kind of just in this autopilot mode of going through the motions of what I'm used to in training. I've figured for me, if I try and think about things too much, then I can't just let my body do what it needs to do. So once I present and I walk on, I just it just happens.
It just happens. You're not you're not drifting off like, oh shit, I forgot. I've got to get some milk later on or something like
Absolutely not.
that.
Sometimes I do
And
get a bit
then,
hungry though, so
oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah. I mean, I was going to touch on that. Like in terms of the diet, I mean, different times and different routines. How do you manage the eating or the full stomach or the bloating, etc.?
Yeah. So it's hard to do gymnastics when you've got a full tummy, especially if it's liquid, because you can actually feel everything moving around. So I tend to go for like small snacks that are high energy, like bananas. I've got crackers, Powerade. So those kinds of things keep me going during a competition.
Well, there's a good shout out to our future sponsor, Powerade. So if Powerade's listening, they can certainly sponsor our podcast. Thank you very much. No subtle hint there at all. I've been chatting to a couple of athletes recently about their sleep patterns. I'm curious to know how your sleep patterns are.
I love sleep. Like it's if I don't get good sleep, I just don't feel like I can give my training or even just general life what I want to. And I tend to be a bit of a grandma. I like to get to bed about 8:30, and
That's not too
then
bad. I'm veering towards 9 o'clock now,
mm,
so not too far behind you.
yeah, and then some like on the weekends when I'm not training or I don't have uni, I kind of look at the clock at about 6, and I'm like, is it too early? But if the body is saying I'm tired, then who am I to stop at getting the sleep? But I've also recently just got a puppy, so he's been waking me up at 5:30, which is actually quite nice because the sun's up now.
Yeah, and do you sort of go, right, the sun's up, puppy needs to go for a walk?
Yep, 100%. I walk every morning.
Yeah, oh, there you go. I'm also curious about the superstitious nature of gymnastics. Are you a superstitious person?
I was, and then something happened, and I'm no longer superstitious. So I used to have in gymnastics, you need like immaculate hair when you compete, and I used to have these 5 hair clips that would go in the same spot for every training session, every competition, until I lost one before a competition, and I went into an absolute spiral. And I was like, I can't compete. That's it. And it was just really stressful. And now looking back on it, I'm like, my gymnastics isn't defined by my hair clips. So I don't know, like I was young at the time. And hindsight is great. But after that, my young self was like, no more. Like that was just too much stress. Especially when we travel overseas, there's a lot of factors outside of our control that happen. So I was just like, nah, I'm done with superstitions and just go with the flow on comp day.
Now, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. One is your own move,
Mm-hmm.
the Godwin. How did that come about? And I suppose looking back now and people trying your move, how does that feel?
It feels amazing that people are trying a move that is named after me. Like in the long history of gymnastics, to have something named after you, especially in this day and age, is amazing. The move was actually suggested by one of my Instagram followers. They kind of just like DM'd me and was like, hey, you've been working on this base skill for a long time. Wouldn't it be cool if you added on an extra half term and then you could get it named after you? And I was like, haha, great, that's so funny. No. And then one of the training sessions, I had a bit of free time. So I was like, why not just give it a go? It'd be kind of cool to have something named after me. And one thing led to another. And I think about a year and a half to 2 years later, I finally got it named.
That is awesome. And then seeing other people attempt the move.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
yeah, it fills my heart with joy.
Yeah, that's almost like a legacy on the sport that you've left that no one can take away from you.
Yeah, 100%.
And then also, I wanted to touch on outside of gymnastics, but staying within the sport, your love of writing a book
Yes.
or books. Sorry, should I say? Not just one, multiple.
Yes. I've got two out
Where did that come from?
and two more coming next year. Where did that come from? Scholastic actually reached out to me and they asked if I'd be interested in writing a kid's book about, like, loosely based on my journey from a child through to moving to elite and then the challenges that I faced through that. And when I was in primary school, Scholastic was a big part of my childhood. Like, you get the little catalogs and you circle what you want, and like book club.
Still to this day, my kids as well. Like they bring home the book club style
book
pamphlets,
club.
and circles and highlights, and there's 4 of them there. And
Yeah,
sometimes they don't have. They're not only books these days. There's some toys in there as well, which we're like, back to the books,
100%.
please.
I got this like little toy horse painting set, and they had 3 horses, and you could paint them whatever you wanted. And I still remember my pink horse with brown dots. Anyway, so yeah, they played a huge part of my childhood. So of course I'm going to jump at the opportunity, and it's just been an amazing experience working with Scholastic and Laura, who's the co-author, and not just sharing my story, but trying to teach kids lessons through the books while not like being in your face. This is a lesson. I've had quite a few parents message me being like, hey, my daughter actually relates to your book and can understand what you're going through. And so that really, just fills my heart.
Yeah, as it should. And number 2 is out now, and the 3rd and 4th next year. You think?
Yeah, definitely.
And then I suppose, again, like the advice that you can give to young participants in sport, in particular gymnastics. And not only have you got your own move, which is an advocacy for gymnastics, but you've got your books, which is an advocacy for gymnastics. How much of you're a role model, how much, I suppose, education that you do out there that this is a wonderful sport and people should be participating?
100%. After the Tokyo Olympics, I think I ended up doing about 32 Zoom calls with all different clubs and athletes, and just talking about my experiences, what I've learnt, anything I do differently, the challenges I've faced and how I've overcome them. So it's weird, like seeing myself as a role model, but it's something that I don't take lightly.
Yeah, and when people stop you and ask you for a selfie or recognise you, how does that make you feel?
A bit strange, to be honest. I'm like, you want a photo with me? Like, okay, that's fine. For me, I'm just an athlete that does a sport that she loves. And so when kids come up and they're like, oh, Georgia, how are you? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How are you? Are you a little gymnast? So, yeah, it is very cute, but also something that I'm still trying to get used to.
Yeah, and we've got the Olympic Games coming up in 8 years' time here in Brizzy, almost 7 years' time in Brizzy now. I mean, how excited are you for the Olympics to come back to Australia?
I'm super excited. It'll be amazing to watch whoever is representing Australia for gymnastics. I've been asked a couple times if I will be going for the 32 Olympics. I will be turning 35. So it's like, I'm not sure yet.
I didn't ask that question, by the way. You answered it. You answered your own
Yeah.
question. There you go. Save me asking that question. I was never going to ask that anyway. What I will ask though is that life after gymnastics. Obviously the book is something which you're deeply passionate about, is making an impact. Is that something which you think you might want to double down on?
Um, I would love to continue working in the community and helping inspire the next generation, and whether that's through the book or coaching or another avenue. Yeah, I would love to continue down that path. But I'm also studying medical imaging.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I used to work in a hospital in Brisbane in the radiology department and just fell in love with it. So I want to be the one taking the images and taking the x-rays one day.
So my about 3 or 4 podcasts back, Bronte Barrett is studied radio imaging,
Nice.
and she's a radiographer now. So there you go. If you want to connect with Bronte to talk about images,
That would be great.
but
I'm
you're the
about
second.
3 years into my degree and got many more to go.
What fascinates you about that?
I think it's like gymnastics is such, well, it's a sport that you really need to be in tune with your body. And I've had, unfortunately, a long list of injuries. And so I've become to know a lot about the body and the bones and different structures and how they work. And it just fascinates me how everything in the body works together. But also being in the radiography industry, you get to help people get better. So those things both really interest me.
George, I'm going to throw some words at you now and to see whether you are or not those personality traits. I'm going to sort of take a bit of a half guess. But you mentioned confident before and you said you're not a confident person. Why do you think that is?
Um, I don't really know. I just
Yeah. But if you prepare well, do you think you're confident when you've prepared well? No?
not really. I think there's just a lot of self doubt that comes into my mind. And I've been trying to figure out ways to work through it. And pre injury, I was starting to feel a bit more confident in my training and when it came to competition. But yeah, I can't pinpoint exactly why like I struggle with the confidence thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because there was a former fast bowler that I've interested. Former test spinner Nathan Horrocks said he wasn't confident playing cricket and got to the elite level. An NBA player said the same thing,
Yeah.
but what they did say was that they're extremely resilient.
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty resilient. There's been a lot thrown at me, and I'm still here, and I still love the sport, and I still want to inspire the next generation. So yeah,
And what about a goal setter?
I set goals. I set two different types of goals: short term and long term. I used to just set long term goals of making teams or winning this medal, and would really get fixated on them. And it was really a win at all cost mentality. But now I set short term goals, long term goals, not just materialistic, but also in 6 months' time, I want to be able to run with my Achilles. In 6 months' time, I want to still be happy and enjoying the sport. But in saying that, if I'm not there in 6 months' time, then that's okay. Like I've learned to
Yeah, so
be,
flexibility around the goals,
yeah,
right?
I've learned to be
So
flexible.
not set and set. Yeah, so there's a bit of leeway.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Do you write lists?
I love writing lists and I love ticking things off.
There you go. What about? I suppose the word that comes to mind is empathetic.
I really do feel like if someone's struggling, I really take that to heart and I will do anything I can to help that person get through whatever they're struggling with. And yeah, I feel like I tend to put other people ahead of my personal feelings a lot, which like I'm okay with until I realize that I've emptied my cup, and I'm really struggling. So that's something
Yeah.
I'm also learning to manage.
What about like mindfulness? Do you like stop and pause and say, "Oh, this coffee smells amazing," or this whatever it is to meal that I'm about to sit down to, just lap it all in as opposed to just scoffing it for the sake of eating?
Again, something else I'm trying to work on, especially after the injury when things were just going a million miles an hour, like surgery, rehab, trying to walk again, Achilles. And then I got my dog, and just watching him kind of explore the world and walk on the grass and sniff the roses. Where when we go on a walk, I'm like, come on, let's go, let's go. I'm like, wait, why can't we stop, and why can't we smell the roses? Why can't we smell the flowers? So he's really helped me slow down a little bit. And now on walks, we'll just stop whenever we need, smell whatever we want, really just take in the sounds, the sights, the feelings. So yeah, slowly working on it.
Yeah, the connection with nature, outdoor sunshine. There's lots of benefits, and we've got a puppy recently. She's just turned 1, but I'm going on big walks with her, and it's certainly when you meet other dogs as well. It's also quite nice to sort of stop and
Yeah,
reflect, and you actually get a bit of exercise done, which is awesome.
100%. We try and get out in the sun when we can. I also love walking barefoot on the grass. It's just so grounding and calming, and it's the sun and the grass is something that'll, whatever state I'm in, I'll be able to calm down.
Let's talk about outside of gymnastics. Is it hard to switch off? Do you want to switch off, or do you just love the sport so much that you're like, well, I can stay within it forever?
I think it's important to switch off. It can consume your life, and without you even noticing it, it can start like bleeding into your personal life and family life and relationships and stuff like that. Because for me, at this level, it can be a stressful sport. So I do love to switch off. What happens in the gym stays in the gym, and what happens in my personal life doesn't come into the gym. So there's clear boundaries, and yeah, that's how I've managed uni and training and my social life and everything outside.
One final question: I started this podcast out of curiosity, and also to help tell stories from athletes and past and present. But in my sort of motto, it's Scoreboard: how athletes define success. I'm curious to know how you define your own success.
That is a good question. Young Georgia would have said by the score on the scoreboard, but how I define success now is how I personally feel after achieving something. Like anything I do, I'm grateful to have the experience of doing. And if I'm happy, great. If there's something I need to work on, amazing. But success is not something I can hold in my hand.
That's a fabulous answer and a fabulous way to end the podcast. Georgia, thank you so much for giving your time today to tell the Georgia Godwin story, from young Georgia to where you are now, and obviously the big setback in 2024, but you're smiling, you've got a smile on your face, and you're appreciating the things in life. You should be very proud of your achievements, and congratulations on the second book, and looking forward to book number 3 and number 4 next year, and looking forward to following your progress getting back onto the mat.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was amazing talking to you.